Nós vai conversar com uma pessoa que estava assim conosco. Tem que se passar dia viernes e a bini su sopa su awe. Nós tem international in New Day, yes, David. Nós tem international. Nós vai conversar com Ryan de Jong e também nós vai papia com Dr. Connett, PhD, dus dokter, mas kibibuki, então nós vai papia de é tópico também, hot topic durante de bastante tempo aqui na pessoa. Sim, este é Florida den Fluoride den nos água. Ryan, feliz mainta. Dr. Connett, good morning, bom dia, bom bini.
Good morning. Hi, Merce.
Let me just permit me to just talk to Ryan and Papiamento just for him to give us an update of the organization. Ryan, conta-nos um update de timeline de tour e costa com a sociedade com a comissão anti-Florida aqui, até com a roda de prensa que você tem.
Ok, em primeiro lugar, bom dia, Turende. Bom, nós estamos preparando nos meses para a geração do dia 22 de noite aqui no auditório do World Trade Center. Para nós poder dar informação correta e claro para nós compreender mais melhor que é Florida está fazendo conosco. Então, me quer duidelijkheid que me tá personalmente que tu rende me tem para nós sano, que está passando, tá hope duidelijk agora aqui que nós temos profissional que tá professor Dr. Paul Connett que pode explicar nós do que está sendo versar riba é área aqui, então me quer não tem mais duidelijk para bem dar nossa informação aí.
Correto, pessoal, maneira para visitar me quer tem outra entrevista. Pouco tá ecos não positivo dos bom de Florida, como por aí, pois. Antes que pois nos por vai mira des.
Sim, coisa que tá brua me quer então coisa que tá brua opinião tá com me vai buscar. Exato, subo mesa nós tem computer hoje em dia, nós sube, você vai Google, você vai buscar boa informação para você saber que tá bom, que tá malo, então, de minha opinião de minha research que agora que tem hora de sonho também.
Sim.
Por sombra, a mim tampouco não que sinto que não papel pequenos de lá entende, aunque comportar tiene te quer como papel pequenos, pero você a mim não tá pretende editar um doctor, tá gewoon lo que me vai buscar. Então, me deve por comparar que é bom, que é malo, mas coisa para bibisa. Então, é bom como a rainha, é o único bom como a rainha tá que se me juntar riba mi gente, é tá tendo limpo, antibactéria não pode pegar riba mi classur lá, é tá cai. É malo, a lista tá sina largo, que a costa foi balança cruelmente. Como é que me então foi balança e para nós tem duidelijkheid, para mim não me se quer doctor que tá dus aqui na Corsol. Kuta bimbisami, kuta bom so então esta maneira nunca papi arriba é malo, kuta hopi duidelijk. Então ele me disse, não, eu me saia claridade riba sa akin, então, nós saia persona.
Correto.
Kuta willing para bini nos isla, para sombra, esta de batalha grande, mundialmente, que hopi outro doctor, kuta eigenlijk riba 2000 doctor, kuta bezig te purba, explica a diferença entre o dano de curto prazo e largo prazo que é para fazer na nossa corpo.
É correto.
Então, lubida é gente um rato.
É sobrado e bom.
É sobrado e a corpo, o que me unta de gente só me tá canaron, me ser hopi outro órgão para me por canaron.
Unir na cultura-seira.
Não sei se lá, então compreende, então é coisa tá bota molostiami, então tá pensei me estou muito contente com o Dr. Connett aí, para sombra, se quer a hora que me sa de toda research como assim, como tem profissional sem trabalhar em mim, que também contami na placa chiquito, antes também tomar lugar para entrar nos pueblos dia 22 de janeiro, já são a hora que 7 horas da noite aqui no auditório, 3 horas largo, para nós ter um compreendimento claro de lo que nós tem de nos awa no momento.
Okay, and that brings us to you, Dr. Connett. Once again, welcome, Bombini, to Curaçao and also to the studios of CBA. If you could give us an introduction, a short introduction of yourself and your expertise, because we know that when we see PhD, here it's a doctor, no? That means you did some very hefty research to earn that title, and you logged in, giving your lectures at colleges, because you're a chemist professor.
Yes, I specialized at St. Lawrence University in environmental chemistry and toxicology. And 17 years ago, my wife persuaded me to look into the fluoridation issue. And I didn't want to, because people in the United States are stigmatized as Looney Tunes if you're concerned about fluoridation. But I read the literature that she shared with me, and the first thing that struck me was the level of fluoride in mother's milk, baby's first meal.
Yeah.
If the baby needed fluoride, that's exactly where you'd expect to find it. But it's incredibly low, 0.004 parts per million, which means that on Curacao, a bottle-fed baby is going to be getting nearly 300 times more fluoride than nature intended for the baby. That to me does not make sense. And from a biochemical point of view, there's not one single process in the body that needs fluoride. And even the promoters of fluoridation now are saying fluoride, the predominant benefit of fluoride is topical. It works on the outside of the tooth, not from inside the body. If you want fluoride, and I don't, then brush it on your teeth and spit it out. There's no need to expose every tissue in the body to this known toxic substance, and there's no need to force it on people that don't want it. And we could go at length into the scientific issues, but the number one issue for most people is you have no right, the government has no right to force me to take something into my body if I don't want it. And ironically, no doctor on this island could force any patient to take fluoride. If a doctor said to you, drink this water, it contains something that's good for your teeth, drink it. You say, doctor, I don't really want to do that. You must drink it. If that doctor tried to force you to take it, he would lose his license.
Right.
But so in other words, this island is doing to everybody what an individual doctor can do to no one. And don't think for one moment that this is what people normally do in the world. Most of the people drinking fluoridated water live in North America. 97% of Europe, including the Netherlands, does not fluoridate its water. You're the odd man out here. I don't know why you continue to do it.
Yeah, why do you think?
Yes, before we go into that, because we're you know, for the chemical components of fluoridation, because we call it toxins, we call it poisons. Where does it come from? What is it derived from? Because you just mentioned that, okay, there's some of it in mother's milk.
That's
so
right.
where did, you know?
Well, the stuff in mother's milk was nice, pure fluoride. The stuff we put in the water, this is just adds one layer of preposterousness on top of preposterous policy. But we get it from the phosphate fertilizer industry. It's a hazardous waste. They scrub the toxic emissions, the air emissions, with water. And the stuff they get is called hexafluorosilicic acid. They can't dump it into the sea by international law. They can't dump it locally. It's too concentrated. But they're allowed to put it into the drinking water. And this isn't just this horrible chemical. It's contaminated with lead and arsenic and a few other things.
Arsenic, isn't that the stuff that it kills you slowly?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a known human it's a known human carcinogen. And for the EPA, the United States EPA, there's no safe level of arsenic. Any level of arsenic will increase the cancer risk of your population. And so put this into the drinking water to increase the cancer. We can argue about if it's a lot or a small, that's not the point. But to increase the cancer risk, when what you're trying to do is to reduce a small amount of tooth decay, when you've got alternative methods, it's foolish.
Like
And
brushing your teeth can
brush
reduce
your
your
teeth.
tooth
We need
decay.
education, not fluoridation. Education for a better diet, education for better hygiene. They're having a very successful program now in Scotland where they're teaching kids in kindergarten to brush their teeth. They're teaching the parents about the good diet that you need for healthy teeth. This is very cost effective. It's very successful.
So, doctor, my question then is, why do you think that, have you made any research on why do we then have fluoride in our water?
Okay. Getting to motivations is very difficult. You need more than a science degree to understand why people are doing this. And I've struggled for 17 years trying to find out what is driving them to do something which I think is totally irresponsible and certainly not defendable from a scientific point of view. So why do they keep doing it? Obviously there's some money involved, there's some interest, economic interest involved, there are liabilities involved. I think the toothpaste manufacturers are concerned. We have the sugar industry, which is very anxious to keep this distraction from eating too much sugar. There may be some other economic interest out there, but I think one of the main things is a very simple human factor, especially when applied to bureaucracies. They do not want to admit they're wrong, because if you, as a big bureaucracy, a health bureaucracy, say, we've made a mistake, they're worried now about losing the public's trust. If they lose the public's trust in fluoridation, what about their other public health programs? Then you get to things like vaccination. That's what I think they're frightened of losing, is the public's trust. Because there's no reason why they're putting so much angst going around calling opponents of fluoridation psychopaths and sociopaths, Minister of the Environment calling citizens psychopaths, because they actually read the scientific literature. I mean, I'm a psychopath because I've studied this for 17 years, written a book on this with 2 other scientists. Come on, you don't have to call people names if you've got a strong argument.
Yes,
and that's what you're looking at. Weak arguments, strong names. No. If people were to read the literature, the scientific literature, with an open mind, they'd find that the benefits of so-called fluoridation wildly exaggerated. They would find out that most countries do not do this, and they would also find out, very disturbingly, the number of health effects that we can now show are associated with fluoride exposure.
Okay.
And there's no question about that, because the millions of people in India and China are drinking too much fluoride, in naturally occurring fluoride. So we know that there are health effects. The only issue is there an adequate margin of safety to protect everyone from drinking water at 1.2, 1.5 parts per million? The answer is no. There is no adequate margin of safety to protect against health effects. And the biggest concern is what it's doing to our kids' brains, the lowering of IQ.
Right. Yeah. That's a very, let's end this part of the interview on that note, because we want to get back to that, Dr. Connett. A very, very interesting interview. Televidente, nós estamos conversando com Dr. Connett, PhD, doutor, siya escrevi buki tocante di assunto di fluorida de nos água, sim ou não, e também nós estamos conversando com Ryan de Jong, de Comissão Anti-Fluorida, Fundação Anti-Fluorida, vamos estar saque e coisas for de nos água, então também com experto, ajuda nós também como público, para nos pueblo, para nos decidir a informação e para nos decidir se é algo que está bom para nós, sim ou não, que ora nós podemos decidir riba nos mesmos, e na ponência tá que nós não temos oportunidade para poder decidir se nós que bebe e tipo de água aqui, se ou não. Experto tá aqui no show pendente para na rede de prensa dia 22 de janeiro, permitir-nos pausa, para mim que pausa nós temos vídeo interessante para você apreciar e ora nos vir back, nós vai seguir papo com o Dr. aqui para nós nós top 5 de com no Florida de nos água. Dia nós stay back.
Vira police! Ami que lança mi mes negócio. Ami que vira astronaut. Ami que vira doctor. Saca é Florida for the hour.
Ata Subway com mais ofertas. Sop of the Day. Todo dia sop diferente. Fresco, preparado para cada dia de semana. Passa todo dia na qualquer Subway. E para 6,75, você ganha bom Sop of the Day. E assim mil para 3,75 só acerca. Assim para cada dia conta pabo. Subway. Eat fresh.
Mi despedida fora do mundo aqui me será com minha família lo recordar sempre. Mi despedida me será reflejar a pessoa como está. Mi despedida me será de maneira desejo para sempre lo que viene back camina nossa despedida. Pensei mi despedida está com el Senhor real. Camina nosso despedir e toque queda sempre com outro.
Furniture Palace. Moderno. Clásico. sofisticado, diferente, colorido o estilo personal. Furniture Palace, tus muebles na inyo price. Furniture Palace, Winston Churchill Way, 201.
Más ventaja, más espacio y beneficio. Ideal para si vos sueño realidad. Amplia por placer y viva. Hipertec TLC. Babocas, renovación y más. Hipertec TLC. Amplia por placer y viva. MCB es un Hipertec. MCB, vos banco amigo.
Ora mi pensa di hasi mi compração mi também esperamos carne, verdura na super fresco, variedade de jus, e melhor que todo produto de marca Jumbo, pão fresco de na mesma forma, cosmética bom sorti. Então, se tu me compras nang Esperamos Supermarket, aqui nang Noti Weekend Special, aqui nang tur dia tá especial.
Mi culpa? Terreno?
O televidente não está back aqui e tópico seguro, muito interessante, mas algo que assim está clavado em mostrar, pois por favor seguir tende, escuta e sim, fora segura entrevista aqui conosco, mas também está sendo bastante aqui não, pois com o Dr. Connett. Dr. Connett, I would like to ask you how do we have tests into the effects that fluoride causes on humans?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, in places like India and China, there are large populations which are overexposed to fluoride. No question about that. It's crippled their bones. But more recently, since the middle 1990s, there have been a stream of studies which have investigated children's IQ. And they've compared villages with high natural level of fluoride with villages of low natural fluoride. And they found, on average, a drop of 7 IQ points between the villages. And now this is 37 studies we're talking about. 37 out of 43 have found a statistical significant dropping of IQ. And now I have recently examined the levels at which this is occurring. The lowest level was 1.8 parts per million. And on this island, you fluoridate at 1.5. 1.8 lowering of IQ, 1.5 is what you fluoridate. There is no adequate margin of safety to protect even the average child on this island from lowering of IQ, and that is very serious.
Dr. Connett, does fluoride, because I keep going back to the mother's milk, that it's a natural occurrence of fluoride. Where else can we get it? Because we all can't drink mother's milk.
Well, if you
where else can we get the natural fluoride?
Well, you don't want natural fluoride. You don't want any kind of fluoride. I think Mother Nature is telling us that the breast is a filter. It's keeping fluoride away from the baby. If you want fluoride, go and drink seawater. Seawater has 1.4 parts per million fluoride, but I don't suggest you do that. Yeah. You can get natural fluoride when you drink tea. There's levels of fluoride in tea and some fish bones and so on. But no, we want to keep our babies away from fluoride. This is not so much anti-fluoridation as much as pro-babies, pro-health, pro-children, pro the best mental development that you can have for your children. Keep them away from fluoride. It is sheer insanity to force this on people. And this is one of those, I mean, we can rant and rave about all kinds of things which are wrong in the world, and most of them are difficult to change, to cure. But fluoridation is as easy to stop as this. You just need a strong wrist. Turn off the tap. The minister could turn off the tap tomorrow if he has the political will. But to get that political will, thank goodness for your TV station, we need to educate thousands of people on this island to what's going on here. What is the truth about this issue?
And that's what I want to go, Dr. Connett, because we've grown knowing that we have, for example, in Curacao, that we have pure water and from the tap.
Yeah.
So
very
a lot
expensive.
of very expensive water.
I know you're going to great lengths with your distillation and your reverse
Yes.
osmosis.
For example. Yeah, so if the government decides tomorrow to remove the fluoride out of water, what would happen for us, like, for example, me, for example, 29 years drinking from the tap, and now no fluoride. The effects I've been getting maybe from the fluoride water, what...
This is such a good question, because the effects of fluoride it's a long-term thing and it's subtle. For example, if you shifted the IQ of your population by 5 IQ points, you wouldn't notice the shift for the average person. A mother or father looking at 2 brothers or sisters 5 IQ points apart, you wouldn't notice the difference. But if you did that, if you lowered the IQ by 5 IQ points for this whole island, you would halve the number of geniuses on this island. You would double the number of mentally handicapped. So this is the problem. You can't see it. Unless you study it, you're not going to see these subtle changes. And you're a young person, but if you were in your 60s and 70s, you might by now be feeling the first effects of fluorides poisoning of the bones, which are identical to arthritis. Stiffness in the joints, pains in the joints, pains in the bone. And the trouble is with things like this, you can't wait until scientists have decided to study something and found a problem and then do something about it. It will be too late for the millions of people with arthritis in the United States. It's going to be too late for the millions of children who may have lost some IQ points. So you've got to react intelligently when you get the warning signals. And we're getting the warning signals from India and China. Sadly, the health agencies in the fluoridating countries like Australia, New Zealand, Israel, Ireland, United States, they're not doing the health studies. They're not attempting to reproduce these studies because they seem to be more interested right now in protecting the bureaucrats' rear ends, protecting a policy, than protecting the health of our children.
But what are they saying? What are they saying? Do they release like official statements and
they say? I tell you what they're saying. It's safe and effective. 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 Did I tell you it was safe and effective? They're like parrots, but when you challenge them, they're like chickens. So they argue like parrots, they defend like chickens. Like we've asked them to debate this issue on this island Wednesday. Here I am, look, a harmless little thing. I'm a professor of chemistry. They should be able to knock me out of the park. The Minister of the Environment, Minister of Health, all their civil servants, they refuse to debate. So instead they go to the newspaper and they start calling us names. That's not what we need. We need a debate. You put your science on the table.
Exactly.
I'll put my science on the table. Let's all listen and then make a judgment. I am confident what that judgment will be, but I don't think they are confident. That's why they don't show up.
Okay, so that's going to be the debate. That's going to be on Wednesday, like 3 hours.
Yes.
And I know you can go on for like 12 hours about this subject. I know with regards to your organization, you gave like 50, 60 reasons as to why to say no to fluoridation. I know this is going to be a stretch and very difficult for you, Dr. Connett, but if you could share with us maybe your top 5 reasons as to saying no to this in our water?
Okay, first of all, I think it's a bad medical policy. It's a very bad medical policy to use the public water supply to deliver medicine, because you can't control the dose, you can't control who gets it, it goes to everyone, and you're violating the individual's right to informed consent to medication. That's the first one. The second thing is, I think the level in mother's milk tells you what nature feels about what the baby needs. And if you fluoridate the water, some babies are going to get 100 times more fluoride than's necessary. And I think the third reason is we're now getting the evidence that it is harming the baby. The lowering of IQ, very, very serious. It may be causing cancer. So there's one study out there, unrefuted, an increase in osteosarcoma in young boys when they're exposed to fluoride in their 6th, 7th, and 8th years. So very serious risk. And the evidence of benefit is extremely weak. The largest study ever done in the United States looked at 39,000 children, 84 communities. The best they could come up with was a saving of 0.6 of one tooth surface out of 128 tooth surfaces in a child's mouth, and they didn't even show that that was statistically significant. So the evidence is weak, and then finally the evidence that it's causing harm is increasing. And I think we can add to that. I'll slip in number 6.
6, yes.
Okay.
I know that's
I
hard
knew
for
I was
you.
going to do that. Number 6 is that most countries don't do this, and yet, according to the World Health Organization, their teeth are just as good, if not better, than the countries that fluoridate.
Oh, speaking about the World Health Organization, what role do they play in this entire scheme back and forth of fluoride?
It's ambiguous. It's just like the United States, where if you could ever get a serious scientific review of the health effects, then people are very, very dubious about this practice, and there are concerns. So one of the reports from the World Health Organization says that there may be an increase in bone fractures, hip fractures in the elderly at around 6 milligrams a day. That's very serious. Some people will be getting that amount. But then if you listen to the oral health division, the dentists, the dentally trained people, then you hear, when they speak, they say that fluoridation is the best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
But they're talking about it from this very narrow focus of what they think is good for teeth, and not on what it's doing to the rest of the tissues. And that's particularly true in the United States with the Center of Disease Control. When we hear that the Center of Disease Control says that fluoridation is one of the top 10 public health practices of the 20th century, what people don't realize is they're not hearing from the 20,000 manpower strong CDC in Atlanta. They're hearing from the oral health division, which is only 30 people. And they're nearly, those that are trained are dentally trained, and their job is to promote fluoridation, not to examine the health effects. So you have to be very, very careful about who is speaking.
Yeah. So you were comparing as well Europe and North America. Europe not having fluoride in the water.
Yeah.
But is it also with products like, for example, the toothpaste, and
No.
none of those products can enter?
If fluoridated toothpaste is universally available,
Okay.
and the fluoride in that is pharmaceutical grade fluoride, pure fluoride, not a hazardous waste product. And if you look at the back of a tube of toothpaste in the United States, not sure about Curacao, in the United States it says drug facts. Only use a pea-sized amount. Do not swallow. And if you should accidentally swallow
Flush
more
with
than the
water.
recommended, contact your doctor or the poison control center. That's and a pea-sized amount of toothpaste contains 1/4 milligram of fluoride, which is 1 glass of fluoridated water. Imagine that instruction on the tap in your kitchen. Keep out of the reach of children, your tap water. If you should swallow more than a glass of this water, contact a poison control center. Now, what's going on? This is Monty Python. Do you have Monty Python in
Oh,
your...
we know of Monty Python,
You know
yes.
Monty Python.
And its
I
flying
played
circus.
soccer with John Cleese
Oh,
in Monty
really?
Python. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
He was a very enthusiastic centre forward. He never scored a goal, but he just he loved the game. He loved the
Are they
game.
still having a reunion about that show?
They are. They're coming together.
Okay,
They're coming
cool.
together.
Going off
But
subject
not me.
here.
I'm not in the show. I'm not in the show.
Now, Dr. Connett, let's just think hypothetically, not in our lifetime, we will be having water without the fluoride, because you know how long sometimes these things take. Is there something that we can do in the meantime, between time? Because we do have bottled water that is sold here on the island, but it's sort of might be coming from the same source. Is there a filter that we can use? Is there something that we can use? Because I know many of our viewers are looking like, oh my Lord, you know, the expert is here, and what do I do now? How do I cook? How do I drink water?
It's a terrible dilemma for people, because yes, you can get filters, reverse osmosis, but they're expensive, and you can only do that, afford that really for most people for what you drink and what you cook with, not what you bathe in. And also, even if you protect yourself, when you go downtown, every glass of water you have in the restaurants, every meal that you have is going to be fluoridated. And then think of low-income family. I mean, it's okay for middle-income families to get these filters, but it's not possible. And the people that I'm most concerned about are low-income families, their children. If they don't want fluoride, they're forced to do it, and their babies are getting, as I said, 200 or 300 times more fluoride than nature intended. So I think the best thing to do is, yes, protect yourself a little bit if you can. Drink bottled water, cook in it, but put in some energy to change the politics. Remember, it's as easy to stop as turning off a tap. If we have enough people concerned about this, the politicians will eventually listen, and then it's over. And I've lived in a town. It took us 7.5 years to get fluoride out of our little village of Canton, New York. And it was such a relief after 7.5 years to drink as much water as you wanted from the tap, to go downtown in the restaurants, drink the water, drink your coffee, drink your tea at work, and so on. It's just a lovely relief. Yeah. We're doing this to ourselves. There's so many toxics that we're confronted with, so many problems that we're confronted with, which are not of our making, and that we're doing our best to mitigate. But this is something that we're doing to ourselves, and really we don't need to do it to ourselves. Turn off the tap. We need education, not fluoridation. Do it for your kids. Do
well
it for
said, Doctor. Dr. Connett, so glad to have had you. Wow, this is some interesting stuff. I know it's going to be a hot topic for like 2-3 weeks. All through the carnival season, people are going to be talking about this. Televidente, nós vamos conversar com o Experto a assunto de Florida, de água rond mundo. Essa aqui está preocupação e corso não te excluir for de reconsumo aqui. Nós vamos conversar também com Ryan de Jong, que está representando a Comissão Anti-Florida de nós aqui no Corso. Ryan, me talaga nos câmara de CBA over na para boa invitação oficial.
Ela vira mais oficial agora.
Oficial, você não diga final oficial, se você perder for de promer, já oficialmente e finalmente vou invitar para vir para amanhã.
Sim. Bom, amanhã 22 de januário, 7 horas da noite, aqui no auditório do World Trade Center, agora bom, está 323 stools só tem. Então, se você um stool, você tem que oferecer nos lie, oferecer trempang para o axia sobre o stool, se não está parado, tem que vai. Pero nós não está lá, não é foto, hora está safe para ter lugar aí. Por sombra, a informação aqui está muito importante, pero esta vai estar transmitir aqui na CBA, esta vai transmitir na telegrafão, na speak um rato, telegrafão e rádio mais.
Isso é debate nacional, passou a ronda, corso comiri.
É água de crunch internacional, então.
Sim. And beyond.
Beyond. Então, está pensei, me invitar vocês mira nós, binse com nós, amanhã, 22 de januário, 7 horas da noite, dentro do auditório, aqui no World Trade Center, então, para abo mês determinar se abo que sigue tuma é água aqui dentro da curva e passar dentro da curva para dar a curva, obviamente. Então, a mim que para abo esse research. Por sombra, a mim não pode decidir para abo, a mim não é doctor, mas a abo que se mete doctor, manda mim.
Está bem preparado.
Mas estou compreendendo. Então, tá pensei, se você não quer a mim não está nada, a se research, mas nem me foi comissamento e nós tínhamos experto, que está Dr. Connett, que pode explicar-nos na placa chiquita, mas não podemos atender água na cortico, que pode dar-nos todos os detalhes, para junto nós vamos pedir amavelmente no nosso governo para sacar o veneno fora de nossa água.
Okay, well said. Televidente, nós vamos conversar com Ryan de Jong, da Comissão Anti-Florida, e também é experto, Dr. Paul Connett, que tem PhD, vamos começar a versar arriba o tópico aqui, da organização Fluoride Action Network. Dr. Connett, so nice to have had you and have spoken to you, very interesting. Keep it up, keep informing, because we all know that education is the key to many things that it surrounds us in our lifetime, and I always say that my greatest desire is for that in the lifetimes beyond us, that our kids will never know these sort of debates and these sort of struggles. So Thank you for that. And have a success tomorrow during the debate. Televidente, permitinos un pausa comercial. Raya, thank you. Mamesa, thank you na po tami. Great. Good stuff, good stuff. Permitinos un pausa comercial. Ora nos been back to sing just un cringy mas pabo. Dembo programa favorito aqui na CBA New Day.